The Angry Video Game Nerd, starring and created by James Bimmy, Duncan Rolfe, is arguably one of the most acclaimed and influential web series in internet history. But with the sheer amount of notable influence in street cred and its relevant cultures like internet and retro gaming, there becomes a point to question if this acclaim in street cred was truly warranted or not. So to truly determine its street cred, I guess we gotta go way back to the past, her.
The name Cinemassacre refers to the style of filmmaking that I've created for myself, which massacres cinema, just defies traditions, doing whatever I want. It can also mean to go crazy making movies, like I'm on a Cinemassacre rampage. All I ever did was make movies because that's what I enjoy doing.
The pilot episode of the series not even being a pilot or even a planned series pilot, but rather simply just a review of Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, originally finished on May 16, 2004 and put onto a VHS tape. The simple sentence of,
"This game sucks,"
unknowingly creating a genre, and what may seem like an incredibly simplistic video was surprisingly revolutionary for its time. But this analysis format had yet to be influential or perfected by the founder. But like a lot of first episodes, its historical significance and obvious crucial nature, the chronology, is its greatest advantage. And by like 2004, stuff like the NES was recently vintage, being around 18 years old. So to make fun of old video games, considering video games are so new then, was kind of a new possibility. The episode is also a significant display of James's technical wizardry of his time. Recording a video game efficiently was not a commonplace thing to do by 2004 standards. I mean, like, obviously the tech did exist.
Donkey Kong Country is truly perfect. If you do not get this amazing new generation of Donkey Kong madness, you are stupid. Yes, I know, that's insulting, but it's also the truth.
And who could forget that Animal Crossing documentary released in 2003?
I live in Ruckersville, Virginia, and I is 21 years old, and I play because I'm young at heart.
But the gameplay from the consoles was capturable from being hooked up to a VCR recorder, a far less convenient standard, something you'd only expect from like a commercial. Because as he would go on to state on his Nintendo Power episodes,
get your mom or dad to take it to the store to get the picture developed. It comes back, and what does it look like? It looks like
But little did we know prior, Rolfe had short videos surviving as early as 1989.
Tastes pretty bad. Tastes worse than beer.
An impressive preservation for a child without internet. His oldest remaining short film being Jimmy Rolfe vs. the Punching Bag, recorded on July 14th, 1989. Other resume highlights would later be displayed in a self-retrospective released in 2008 titled Cinemassacre 200, which he considers the 200th, quote, film in his, quote, filmography. Also of a similar nature, Rolfe, A No-Budget Dream, was a documentary about his life made by fellow college students.
I think my dream would be to maybe make a really big cult sensation, like maybe just have people going nuts in the theaters like Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Rolfe himself claims that he was flattered that somebody else wanted to make a video about him, an early sighting of creative potential before the invention of YouTube, just on the basis that he stuck with this Cinemassacre brand for so long. But there actually exists childhood home video of him actually playing various games and acknowledging the difficulty.
This place has too much long jumps. This isn't fair!
Cinemassacre was an alias for the productions of his as early as 1989, although it wasn't necessarily an official production company in 2002, no matter how amateur with its website foundation. The original name being Cinematica, a name that Rolfe came up with the spot when he first met later Cinemassacre contributor Kevin Finn. But that name was taken by an obscure television studio company, which led to the alteration of Cinemassacre, the logo being an absurd camera chainsaw device first drawn in Mario Paint, which is technically a digital art software. This rebrand, if you could call it a brand, being more representatives of Rolfe's love for the horror genre. Rolfe had also developed his own methods of editing without without practical film by utilizing 2 VCR recorders, one to project the tape and one to record the tape recording a recording. Processes that were eventually eliminated when technological and craftsmanship improvements became possible. One of the few people to originally see the Simon's Quest review was Mike Matate, who had been loosely involved with Rolf's homemade productions, but their friendship would grow closer. The 200 self-retrospective would be influential to his viewers at the time. However, this would later cement a prominent criticism in later years of him referring to these various homemade movies as, quote, films. Films as in what he put on his filmography since childhood. So this Simon's Quest incredibly simple video, consisting of rather inefficient production standards by today, was a technical marvel that nobody really saw before the internet. Matate loved the Simon's Quest video seemingly because it fit his sense of humor with the presence of vulgarity and video games released in his youth, and he would influence James to make more reviews and eventually start significantly contributing to the series. Mate's first known publicly released collaboration with Rolf would be the Alternate History of Mario, a college assignment from 2002, which would not have a proper Cinemassacre release until 2006 and would not be officially released on YouTube until 2020. Matate is the host of the brief retrospective, which acknowledges the fact that Super Mario was named after Mario Segall, a real estate developer and the Nintendo of America's warehouse property landlord, during the localization of Donkey Kong, in which Mario's precursor, Jumpman, appears for American audiences. The retrospective coming with a comedic twist of Rolf playing Mario Segall and showing the negative effect of Super Mario's successful mass franchising and his lack of royalties, including alcoholism and raging over a video game in a way.
In 1988, Mario received pop culture's highest honor with his own cereal, half Zelda, half Super Mario Bros.
Do the Mario! Swing your arms from side to side. Come on, it's time to go! Do the Mario!
Do the Mario! I don't do the freaking Mario! Why don't you swing your arms from side to side, Miyamoto?
Another notable early collaboration between the two would be Rolf's The Deader the Better in 2005, a short film about two employed gravediggers who are also hunters and custodians at the cemetery. Matate is credited as Car Zombie.
Get off me! Get off me!
Stephen J. Glansky plays one of the main leads, Lloyd, who would later appear in AVGN.
It's just those corpses you butcher. They have families. Why can't you have any respect?
They're dead.
Yeah, and our job is to put the dead back where they belong, not make gore masterpieces. Just destroy the brain and bring them down in the most efficient manner.
I think I made pretty efficient work of that last one. If you get off your skinny ass and go take a look.
Rolf has credited this as the last major production of his before the success of the Angry Video Game Nerd. This is also of a similar nature to A Night of Total Terror, a 1996 horror short film with many of the same stylistic decisions. Rolf credits this short as crucial to his profession and an instance of first being truly satisfied with his limited production values.
For the first time, I was happy with something that I did. Even though it seems like nothing now, it gave me the confidence to pursue filmmaking as a career. That single weekend was the turning point of my life and defined who I am.
Even receiving a digital remaster in 2015. Another series Rolf credits as important and has provided extensive commentary for was Snick's Flicks, a hexology series beginning in 1993 at age 13 and ending in 1998. Consisting of a warlock who looks a lot like Frylock coming back from the grave. Most pre-AVGN Rolf short films are more remembered for their reflective commentary rather than their historical significance.
So I'd always pull the plug out like this, and then I'd scotch tape it to the back. But what I didn't realize was that you can see the hole.
And you could probably consider Jimmy Rolfe versus the Punching Bag up until The Deader the Better as a 3-decade Stone Age pre-angry Nintendo nerd. But there is arguably appeal in the fact that this is a huge dose of nostalgia for only a select few group of people, and it's not really something else anyone but James can analyze due to its amateur nature. But after the Simon's Quest review in the next month, in June of 2004, James would borrow the game based on Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from his friend Mike Matate, a game he just didn't dislike but outright hated as a child. This unlocked childhood memory of a distaste inspired a follow-up, another bad NES game review that took a much different approach, more being a staged bizarre tangent about a stereotypical nerd complaining about the game.
Pong is better, and Pong is only like 3 lines in a ball. Those little tiger like electronic wrist games, those are better than Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Not only creating a visual portrayal, but also creating a fictional character, featuring some of the same personality traits of the portrayal of Mario Segal. Much like its predecessor, its historical significance being the main appeal rather than the actual analysis or comedy itself. The main thing being missing is the actual analysis.
And the staff doesn't do anything. Look at this. I'm gonna try to kill somebody. It's not gonna work.
The difficulty inspired yet another bad NES game review, and this, intended to be the end of a trilogy, would begin a full series and a considered season. On a new public video sharing platform called YouTube under the username James Nintendo Nerd, managed by Mike Matate at the moment, Rolfe not utilizing the pre-existing Cinemassacre brand immediately, prioritizing the distribution of the pre-existing Angry Nintendo Nerd trilogy. Karate Kid, even if it is the 3rd episode, it is definitely the first true episode spiritually. This also establishes the alias of the angry Nintendo nerd with a presentation sequence in the opening, since the nerd had yet to been publicly given a name to an audience. Taking the analysis of Simon's Quest and the tangent element of Jekyll and Hyde, combining both to a farther affection, also being far more of a short film from the variety in the live-action shots. This episode actually establishing a canonical reason as to why the nerd is raging.
I hate this game, but why am I playing it? Well, that's the question everyone has asked themselves, and they all have the same reason. Because you're angry and you want to win. You want to beat the Nintendo, but the cold fact is that nobody cares but you.
This sort of narrative element of overcoming childhood anger would be a reoccurring element for games he established he was familiar with as a child in future episodes. Also establishing part of the appeal of the series for people his age, which is far from an enjoyment requirement, and sort of introducing the concept of physically destroying the game in a comical nature. If you want to count spitting on the game and pretending to flush it down the toilet as a destruction, it's the first instance. But in a way, it sort of creatively greenlit a full series of the Angry Nintendo Nerd, continuing with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which established a rule of thumb that fictional characters could exist in the universe, with the nerd calling Jessica Rabbit, and despite the technical issue and limited performance, pausing and repeating the lip-syncing audio.
Well, I got your number and I'm calling just to say F you.
I hope you're proud of yourself.
Yeah, well, I hope you're proud of yourself, and you know what I mean, you
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
Yeah, well, wait till I draw your I'd know your own blood, you bunny coming over, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill the family.
That blatant issue with the presentation doesn't necessarily matter because it's funny and impressive for 2006, and the more prominent technical limitations in the beginning are arguably charmful, in spite of later technical improvements. Also, after this episode, Cinemassacre would be officially affiliated, but not necessarily partnered with businesses like Game Trailers. Game Trailers would become affiliated with gaming multimedia website Screw Attack. One of Screw Attack's founders, Craig Skidamus, aka Stuttering Craig, initially discovered the nerd on the basis that when partnering with Game Trailers as a video hosting subsidiary, content needed to be hosted, and discovered the Angry Nintendo Nerd in its infancy by simply trying to find funny videos about video games. And lo and behold, he found overqualified talent. But at this point, the angry Nintendo nerd had yet to profit from contractual obligation from Screw Attack. This professional hosting would not begin until February 2007. For the moment, game trailers was just another way to watch Angry Nintendo Nerd on top of YouTube and Cinemassacre.com, but that will change later on. The next episode, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, also credited as being crucial to the series' chronology, given that Rolf claims it was the first episode that launched the nerd into any popularity. It was the first episode not debuting as a re-upload on YouTube, and given the lack of production value and mass unprofessionalism of early internet, Rolf was ahead of its time, with very basic concepts like video editing and acting. His work since Jimmy Rolf vs. the Punching Bag had paid off, and was fortunate enough to benefit from technological advancements as well. The production value was exceptional for its time, and Rolf wasn't part of a genre yet, he was the only, allowing him to stand out from most of the crowd in YouTube in its entirety, and was the original absurdist gross-out rant.
Cowabunga. Cow a fucking piece of dog shit. This game is diarrhea coming out of my dick.
Something that would become a staple when justified. This would also mark the debut of title card illustrations by Mike Matate. Matate essentially being a series producer and a very crucial one, as we'll see. Being a prominent co-writer and conceptual developer, cracking jokes for the script, finding games, and capturing gameplay. And most memorable, a later secondary actor for the series. If you ask me, Matate is more crucial to the series than most people give him credit for. The art of illustrated title cards sort of got lost with the mainstreaming of photo editing software, and even with the Nerds edition, that didn't last forever. I wish YouTubers still treated their videos like an episode of Fanboy and Chum Chum, damn it. Some of Mate's title cards are better than others, but once again, the caricatures are arguably part of the charm of early YouTube. Next being Back to the Future, and this is the first episode to contain multiple official edits as a result of copyright complications from both YouTube and DVD releases. And as this is a licensed game review, it is also an improvement with its source material comparison, although this game is a far better example of an inaccurate adaptation. The original edit featuring reactionary clips of the movie, which is a fun touch even if the copyright system said else what. It's a pretty short episode, and it's just too short to do two games justice at less than 7 minutes. But at this point, I think the writing had yet to achieve a proper balance and analytical runtime, of not being too long, but not too short to fully analyze the material. The pacing and runtime would become a great strength with later episodes that increase the rewatch value. The next episode, McKids, being another example of a fairly underdeveloped early episode by today's reviewing standards, and later episodes even from the same year. This episode, Mike Matate claims he wrote entirely, and it kind of shows.
Honestly, like going back to the nerd video, another one I wrote was the McKids episode. And this one's more obvious. McKids is mostly a good game. The only thing I don't really like about McKids is the near the end of the game, there's those zippers, and so I was like, all right, well, I didn't beat the game. Like, what can I do here? So I just did like the toasty thing, and then James took that and he read the script and whatever. So that was that episode. And when I was working on the McKids one, he was working on one of the other ones. So I've talked about that before, how sometimes he'll work, at least back then, he'd be working on one and I'd be like working on another one.
You know, because Mike was more of the jokester and the gamer, not really the critic. Notably a little less over the top than something that Ninja Turtles improved on. But this episode introduced one of the most prominent elements of the series, the theme song, as well as Guitar Guy, a self-insert of Kyle Justin, the performer of the song, who would further contribute music to the series and would become a secondary character. The theme song is hilarious in its own right, the lyrics referencing various absurd quotes. In spite of the goofy lyrics, it's genuinely very catchy. And that's not something I can say for most other channels that attempt a legitimate theme song like LINKARA. And as Mike would later state, it's not really that bad of a game, so a lot of the jokes kind of feel forced. If anything, it feels like part of a McDonald's games episode. JonTron would go on to make a food games duology, in which McKids is one of the covered games, a far better dive into the genre.
Help, help, the Hamburglar has run off with my magic bag. Please help us get it back. Get it yourself, you creep!
But this isn't the only episode I'd give the review of JonTron Did It Better. With the next episode, Wally Bear and the No Gang, an anti-drug PSA game. This episode kind of fails to contextualize and satirize the social conditions, the war on drugs that led to the game's creation, which could have benefited the review. JonTron talked about this game as well in his anti-drug games video. I think this one should have gotten a revisited review down the line, since there's clearly way more to make fun of, as JonTron displayed.
I can already see him saying no to society's norms. Now, as you can see, he does not wear his hat straight. No, it's perfect, because if a drug dealer walks up to that side of his body, he doesn't have to say no to him. His clothes do it for him.
But there is actually an alternative version of this episode. A select at least 39 AVGN episodes, mainly early ones, as well as Board James episodes have higher quality remastered editions. But the remaster of Wally Bear and the No Gang is actually a full-on special edition. So when James says,
I'm just kidding. I have no intentions of changing my older videos like that.
There are a small handful of times he did do that, which I will be pointing out. Wally Bear being the first, if you don't count the copyright-free edits from Back to the Future. The special edition also including a title card, which this one previously didn't have one, despite that being part of the established format already. So that edition actually resolves a formatting inconsistency. But this episode also includes a scene of the nerd calling the official automated hotline of Wally Bear. And the bizarre thing about it is that the hotline was available until as late as 2007, which is an insane dedication to a war on drug mascot. So it's not a pointless special edition, but it's just an episode that JonTron did better and was super underdeveloped. The next episode, Master Cheeu and the Drunkard Who, is another one of the worst episodes. I can recall struggling to even remember what the episode was about, because it's an episode where there's nothing really even to say about the bad game, and the experiment does not pay off. It's gimmick pickle adding nothing. And this may be a hot take, but I don't like Pickle, like at least unironically. While it is commendable as an experiment and technically impressive from the presence of an animated character being interacted with, he only has one joke that he can say his name that involves poop, and I guess has poop on his head. He doesn't do anything. You see, this episode was truly for longtime Cinemassacre fans of 2006, because this is technically a crossover episode. Pickle was not an original character created for AVGN, but for a Cinemassacre original, Wizard of Oz 3, Dorothy Goes to Hell from 2006. A very Aqua Teen Hunger Force inspired parody sequel.
Real pickle now.
Pickle. Oh yeah! Who wants a mother Kool-Aid?
Oh, thanks, Kool-Aid Man. You saved that.
A series Rolf has credited as a creative inspiration on lots of instances.
Mike and I were at a bar. We were talking to Dave Willis from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. He's the voice of Meatwad and Carl. And we were asking him about effects, and he said, just do it in Photoshop. And that's something I've lived by ever since.
It's extremely Newgrounds 2006 for all the right reasons. James and Mike doing all the voices.
Awfully rude. Like you're perfect.
Mike also illustrating some characters and notably playing the Cowardly Lion.
Time warp, that's what that is. I didn't know what that was, but now I know. Thanks for clearing that up for me.
This would also introduce Super Mecha Death Christ.
In the original Wizard of Oz, she had Toto as a sidekick, and then in Return to Oz, it was
the chicken.
It was the chicken, so we were like, okay, what's it going to be in Wizard?
Because we wanted to be Wizard of Oz 3. That's what we were trying to do. So we just looked at the pickle on the plate, and we're just like, I don't know, pickle. That was it.
One of the most forgotten Cinemassacre series is the Pickle spin-off.
Bless me bagpipes.
Which only lasted 3 episodes, debuting slightly after AVGN. It's revealed that Pickle has a mother and father named Dick Pickle and Tit Pickle. Honestly, the Pickle spin-off is pure 2000s dated internet humor. The next episode being another licensed game, Top Gun, which is another solid early episode. This is when the lip-syncing motions begin to become incorporated, even if it does provide higher quality audio, is arguably a technical inconsistency.
Down, down, up, up, left, left, right, right, up, left, left, down, down.
But again, some find the technical improficiencies unmatchably charmful. As Rolf would later acknowledge, this one's title card doesn't really do anything unique in relation to the topic. This is an issue with a select few early episodes. This one also introduced the random shouting of ass, a great running gag because it's vulgar and grammatically makes zero sense. This one also has an alternative edit removing the song Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins when parodying the film. The next episode, Double Dragon 3, is another example of a fairly underdeveloped early episode, featuring no live action, which had become the standard up to this point. There's one solid joke pointing out Bimmy and Jimmy, which would become a running gag and nickname of Rolf, but it feels like that was the only reason that this episode was even made. One thing I feel is a reoccurring instance of wasted potential is the lack of a retrospective sense in nerd episodes in its entirety, with a few exceptions of course. Like, this whole episode could have covered the original trilogy, which are mentioned and which could have allowed for better displaying of contrast as to why 3 sucks but not 1 or 2. But the next episode, Friday the 13th, was definitely a turning point for the series, truly the first episode that wastes zero potential and would raise the stakes for future fictional antics, by having Jason Voorhees actually show up upon the game being negative. The sarcastic criticism being another highlight, with the movie parody sketches actually being well lit for the confined space. The production value specifically really enhances the horror parody of everything. This would also be Mike Mate's on-camera debut for the Nerd series, but he'd yet to speak fitting the portrayal of the characters. But this would only be part 1, the following releasing later that Halloween season. Nightmare at Elm Street also being another highlight of the series, containing production value analysis and redeeming qualities of the previous. This one taking advantage of a nightmare sequence, which is a technical marvel of its time, featuring the charm of effects and well-strategized, convincing incorporations of multiple nerds on screen at once. Oddly, the technical and budget limitations enhance the style here, with Freddy Krueger's face never actually being shown outside of the nerd discovering it himself, limiting the possibility of an unconvincing prosthetic, which would be perfectly excusable but oddly finds a way around potential nitpicking. Mate playing Freddy Krueger but James voicing the shadowing of the character. This episode also has an alternate version with the music of Alice Cooper's Welcome to My Nightmare, not seen on YouTube, a figure relevant to the franchise given his brief appearance in Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. The owners of the IP are also sort of aware of this episode, as this parody was included as a DVD extra on 2010's Never Sleep Again: The Elm Street Legacy, a multi-hour franchise documentary, which I guess is a pretty high honor if you think about it. The episode concluding with a teaser to the next, The Power Glove, which is also a reference to Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare, where Freddy plays a game starring himself with a Power Glove equivalent.
Get out of here now, please! Hey! You forgot the Power Glove!
The Power Glove is just one of those things with street cred and pop culture for all the wrong reasons. It's been made fun of a ton in media in general.
Dude, this controller blows.
So this episode actually works as a contextualization to the disappointment in its general malfunction. It was also sort of relevant at release since the episode came out on November 15th, 2006, 3 days before the 19th and the launch of the Nintendo Wii, a console prioritizing similar motion-controlled gaming technology. The blatant improv with the game's malfunctioning is hilarious. The conclusion being the glove being unable to control something as basic as Mario Brothers being an excellent conclusion. It's really satisfying to see something infamously bad be analyzed to further conclude that it sucks even harder. The next episode, Chronologically Confused about sequel titles, not really being a nerd episode, but rather a precursor to another series of Rolf's, explaining the confusing nature of poor franchise titling to both video games and movies. And this being such a common occurrence, it's relatable to a fan of things. This is also the first episode where the nerd's alias changes to the Angry Video Game Nerd, as a result of avoiding copyright complications, allowing the series title to be trademarked, as it began to be more professionally affiliated with Screw Attack and game trailers. But this change would eliminate the expectation of Nintendo discussion, allowing the games that suck ass's catalog to be expanded to not just NES games, but essentially all games in retro video game territory. The next episode, Rocky for the Sega Master System, is truly the last early underdeveloped episode and is another instance where the special edition of sorts is an improvement, this being the first true non-Nintendo episode, and this one really has nothing funny to work with, this episode being released to commemorate the release of Rocky Balboa, the 2006 film mentioned in the previous episode, working far less better than the Power Glove commemorating the Wii's release. Rolf has consistently expressed his love for the Rocky franchise, so I get what he did it, but Rolf was also raised and even went to college in the Philly area, so being somewhat local or local enough around the time, he did at least have access to one movie location. The special edition actually added the scene of throwing the game down the Philadelphia Museum of Art scene in the film. The locational stuff is cool, but this episode was just kind of forced to commemorate a franchise release, a reoccurring issue with some licensed games episodes I'll point out later. The next episode being a Christmas special and the longest episode yet, Bible Games, which is a great example of using obscurity to your advantage to be informative, covering unlicensed religious-based games. The questionable nature of most low-budget religious media is present, the games allowing ton of great jokes. The episode actually being a two-part simultaneous release only on Screw Attack's original release of it, simply because most video players around the time could not exceed 15 minutes. So with other original releases of the episodes, it was the full 17. Because of the specific Screw Attack alteration, this does not count as a two-parter in the chronology according to the YouTube releases and Rolf's own self-documentation of the series. Also featuring a Christmas rendition of the theme song, which is a great addition that would continue to be reused annually. This concludes the first year of AVGN being a series. February of 2007 would begin the first full year of partnering with game trailers, which would allow a benefit for both parties given limited success of game trailers, and a present method of monetization giving Rolf a higher financial security. Because the YouTube Partner Program did not exist yet, that releasing in December 2007, which is what grants advertising revenue to channels of qualifying metrics and community guidelines. And in the program's infancy, they were far less tolerant of angry video game reviews given the juvenile nature, and to this day, YouTube is still very strict about non-general audience content, but they were even more strict with partnerships, and it got to the point where Cinemassacre's channel would not be monetized until at least 2012 to my knowledge, which was not long before game trailers would no longer be involved with AVGN distribution. YouTube essentially screwing Rolf out of probably a half-decade of revenue, and probably even more from more community guidelines. But thankfully, Stuttering Craig had his back. The first episode of the year being the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 Duology, which is not only one of the most unique, but one of the most memorable episodes, given that it's the only non-video game review and the nerd excludes things like Nintendo Power, which are still primarily related to the medium. Now, of course, James would begin making movie reviews, and this may have just been the first technical instance of it. And of course, later this year, Cinemassacre's Monster Madness, another beloved series of Rolf's, would debut. Still continuing to this day, although different. Now, I don't know about you, but I also grew up with a lot of ancient horror movies, so when I discovered a channel that prioritized the niches of old Nintendo and the scariest flicks of 35, I was even more sucked in. Monster Madness is another series with an arguable decline in quality, which I won't get into the inconsistency of, but that was something I also enjoyed during its peak in quality. But this is the one time the Angry Video Game Nerd reviewed a movie under the alias The Angry Movie Nerd, which the alias would never appear again, infamously this video not being officially re-available on YouTube until 2020, with a re-edit combining both parts, thus further excluding the Wizard review segment of Mario 3, which we'll get to later, as well as Nostalgia Critic guest appearances of films. This also excludes the Ricky 1 review, which Rolf does not count as an episode in the chronology.
Alright, this is a special review for the Nostalgia Critic,
which he reviewed as a result of the fictional feud with the Nostalgia Critic, who would also debut in 2007.
Like, we used to be a country a proper country.
A figure that I've talked about in extensive detail already as well as his associates.
Don't you talk about me, you son of a bitch.
Including some of the nerds' appearances and involvement. If you want more context, link in the description below. Being taken down because YouTube was also very strict about usage of copyrighted content, even if legal transformative usages were being made. To this day, often infamously disregarding laws that have existed since the 1970s. This copyright complication seemingly altering the possibilities of more AVGN movie reviews that could have been. It may have just been a plan to be a reoccurring type of episode to shake up the formula, as Season 2 was beginning, but it surprisingly benefits from a more unique nature.
Well, yeah, it is. It's my opinion that it's a mother fact that this pile of dog called Ninja Turtles 3 is the most god-awful disgrace in human existence.
And the fact that there can't be a worse movie in the nerd's opinion because it was never elaborated upon is a formatting consistency. And it never being officially on YouTube again for so long made it kind of like an underground trivia piece. And that's not the only episode that wasn't on YouTube for a very long time, if you know what I'm saying. The Season 2 compilation uploaded in 2015, which he probably could have gotten the claims removed from, also missing this one. There are unofficial uploads of the review as early as 2012, which is how I first saw it. It's super convincing that the nerd thinks that it's the worst movie ever made, like obviously it's not, even if it's blatantly bad. And I didn't like Ninja Turtles 3 growing up either, despite not being alive for its release. I actually had one of those like cheap Warner Brothers 4-movie collections from Walmart, and the original trilogy and the 2007 animated movie were on that, and I just skipped that bottom half of the disc set. The dissatisfaction being convincing from the difference in quality installments being blatantly night and day. A great way to start off the year, even if YouTube wasn't too chill with it. But who knows, maybe YouTube's unhinged illegal policies had a positive impact on the franchise. The next episode, Atari 5200, being another one of the most memorable.
Look at how huge this beast is. It's ginormous. And why is there a door on it? Is this a video game console or a closet?
It's both a console overview and a slapstick episode, but oddly the slapstick aspects blend perfectly. The criticisms of the Atari 5200 being gigantic and unreliable, then seeing the most Looney Tunes-ass tasks possible to just play it. So it still makes sense and doesn't feel like slapstick eliminates substance here. Like, games are barely even played, but that doesn't matter because it's funny. The next 3 episodes being a trilogy about Ghostbusters games, the longest episode for a fat minute. Taking a retrospective angle, an advantage not often taken. Including the intro, the nerd spends 22 minutes on the first game across 2 parts, and it doesn't feel poorly paced. Like, it's a long game review, but it's very obviously frustrating.
Well, there's only 3 Ghostbusters again. I mean, what's their problem with Winston? What are they, racist or something?
Much like Back to the Future, all 3 of these episodes have edits that eliminate the use of movie footage, with the discussion of Ghostbusters being an interesting relic of its time. But even if I wasn't alive for the original duology, I remember people kept saying that they should make a 3rd one. Then it actually had a revival. Then a revival of a revival. That surprisingly wasn't despised by fans. A long episode, but a justified runtime. The next, another classic, SpiderMan.
Holy shit! It's Spider-Man!
Meant to commemorate the release of Spider-Man 3. And this is the first instance of a fictional character actually showing up that's an ally, which as we'll see is sort of a rarity. Spider-Man being played by Kyle Justin, the man behind the couch.
Bombs in the game. Why can't that bomb look like a bomb for Spider-Man? Yeah, I know it.
It's an improv-oriented episode, but the chemistry between 2 cast members portraying their selective roles just carries the entire episode.
I wish Spider-Man would deliver my pizzas every day.
I'm gonna shove a pizza up your ass.
Genuinely good acting is kind of rare on YouTube in general, even to this day. The parody song at the end is just so stupid it's genius, and is a great performance from Kyle Justin as well. It's like a dumb parody of Makeup at Recess. The intro to the episode is also a slideshow of fan art with a tribute cover instrumental of the theme, which is truly a testament to how acclaimed the series was at only 23 episodes. This would be the first of many fan tribute intro sequences. These next 2 being another 2-parter, and also 2 of my favorites, the Sega CD and 32X, 1 episode per Genesis peripheral, contextualizing the technical standards' impact on its audience and building tons of great jokes around limited technology.
How would you like it if I conduct the rest of the video like this? Full motion video, my ass. I'd rather it be full screen.
elaborating as to what truly led to the cash grab. It's satisfying to see just the obvious cash grab fail and the nerd mock it, and discussing games on the console, which as I feel is something that a lot of console overviews don't do enough. The jokes about the technical requirements in the games just being hilarious as well.
It's like getting gang. Both of its slots are getting at the same time.
The Sega CD is also the first and only episode to contain the extended theme song, a fun series extra. It's cool that it got to be in the show at least once, but not every episode to not pad it out, since most shows have extended theme song sequences, but it's never played in the show and only on the soundtrack. Next, The Silver Surfer is another one of the episodes where the game's unhinged, unfair difficulty is very visibly noticeable.
He looks so stupid. I mean, what the hell's wrong with him? He's just like...
And the commentary greatly gets the point across. This episode is just pure rage and clearly justified and hilarious. Rolf has claimed this is the video he just flat out forgot to color correct, and it shows with the downgrade in visual quality and palette.
The original Silver Surfer video was an example of me forgetting to color correct. The whole video had an orange tone.
This one would have a remaster, but it would not alter the lack of color correction. The next one, Die Hard, was actually the last one I saw when watching through the series in complete random order for the first time. This one being commemorated to the release of Live Free or Die Hard, and it just felt forced, and there was nothing to work with, although the 9/11 intro is pretty funny.
What does this remind you of?
It's kinda, it's a little, yeah.
And that could also apply to the next two episodes, Independence Day and The Simpsons Games, a 4th of July special and a commemoration release of The Simpsons movie. Independence Day being a 4th of July special isn't a bad idea, but the game doesn't offer much to work with. It's a 6-minute episode in a 13-minute episode standard, and I can't really call it short but sweet. It's not only the first PlayStation game discussed, but also the first mid to late 90s review. So the fact that he reviewed something from a console he was only one generation behind from was kind of a rarity for the series at the time. Of course, the definition of vintage changing over time, this episode being fairly recent for a nerd subject matter standard, which isn't a bad thing if it's not a bad episode. To quote the opening, there was Simpsons games up the ass, and he doesn't really take advantage of Simpsons games up the ass. Again, probably to meet the deadline of commemorating the movie release date.
Spider-Pig does whatever a Spider-Pig does.
One game I always wanted him to review was Simpsons Wrestling for the PS1. Simpsons Arcade was one of my favorite games growing up. I grew up with the PS3 and Xbox 360 re-release. Next, Bugs Bunny's Birthday Blowout, being memorable from the inclusion of Bugs Bunny interrupting the gameplay throughout, being Mike Mate's first speaking role.
I can't believe it! In my own house! It's Bugs Bunny! Bugs Bunny!
This episode also cements the presence of the occasional fight scenes, which are actually interestingly choreographed compared to something like Kick-Assy or much of early YouTube.
I'll show you what's up, you bunny piece of shit.
They clearly had extensive planning that others wouldn't even think of when trying to create the illusion of violence. The next episode would infamously not be on YouTube for a long time and is also missing from its respective season compilation. Atari. Now obviously it's about games, but even if there was actually no naked photography, this is the one time an episode was deemed just too juvenile for YouTube. But it did receive a censored edit in 2023, which is a far more reasonable solution. So if you swore you saw it on YouTube prior to the censored edit, then you were probably watching an unofficial re-upload, which is how I first discovered it. And a non-YouTube partner could totally get away with it because, again, there's no actual sexual imagery. But for some people, this may have just be the classic episode you never saw, as well as that Captain S crossover, which I'll mention later.
There's really something wrong with this whole scene. You gotta be a total stand naked at the bottom of a building with your mouth wide open to catch some guy on top of a roof.
The jokes of the episode just write themselves given the unlicensed nature of the Atari games. However, the 2023 censored edit called Atari Pork is ridiculous. It's not even a censored edit, it's a TV-friendly edit.
You gotta be a total frigid bore to stay knocked out when bottoms of buildings are where noobs race open to catch Jiffy from some car lubing off on top of a roof.
So you figure they blur out like Custer's asshole, making a couple bleeps for sexual terms and stuff, but no, it's all vulgarity beyond swearing. Atari Pork being far too censored to the point where it's unwatchable and unreasonably censored, awkwardly dubbing over the lines YouTube is strict about. Like, what a re-edit. But I guess you could argue that was a satirical point, but there's not much of a reason to watch the satirical point edit over the original. But this wouldn't be the only official censored edit. The entire first season has one, which are not completely unreasonable, but it felt like it was done for the money that Rolf clearly has. The next episode being Nintendo Power, another classic. It's the first time that the nerd's character is broken, but for good reason. Mainly being a personal reflection of his experiences with the Nintendo Power magazine. That's far more personal, and personal videos can be interesting if done correctly and more unique since it's an extension of the host and not really an analysis. The historical significance of the magazine for its audience being well contextualized.
Here's the worst one yet. It's some old creepy holding a log of shit. God damn.
But it doesn't shy away from the shocking and dated nature of the magazine. Oddly, Nintendo Power was still going at the time and would until 2012. Kyle Justin also provides an original song, sort of like a commercial jingle, which is a great addition. I originally assumed it was like a cover of a commercial jingle or something, but it wasn't. Similar to Bad Luck Bootsy's contributions to Board James. And the part where the nerd points out the fan-made Mega Man Robot Masters, one of them, Clown Man, is of the same concept of Clown Man from Mega Man 8, but that wasn't until the late 90s. That was probably a coincidence. I have not seen many people point that out. The next three would all sort of be Halloween specials, the last releasing in late September, being Fester's Quest, which was one of those games I kind of picked up on the street that was ridiculously difficult. This episode featuring Rolf portraying the entire Addams family, playing their shitty game, with the exception of Cousin It, played by Kyle Justin, who makes a great juvenile parody of the theme song.
It's worse than gonorrhea, I'm gonna take that pee.
Next, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It might just be my favorite episode, and is one of the best uses of parody humor, including additional characters, including parodying the prologue, the whole episode being presented with a filter to match the film's original gritty cinematography, in addition to Mike Matate portraying a stand-in for Chop Top from the film, playing the nerd's biggest fan.
Give me a tour or something?
Yeah, okay, well, here's the games. You see, here's the games.
Here's Top Rider. Rubber Man.
His character's writing of asking annoying questions from an unhinged fandom member is on point, even alluding to a possible E.T. review, which is the closest thing Mike ever had to a self-insert, and is a character that I think should have been brought back on other instances I'll point out later. It could have been usable to prevent similarities from Mike's self-insert in Board James' motherfucker Mike, but would still allow Mike just to be Mike.
Funblade Texas Chainsaw Massacre for Atari 2600.
Board James would begin in 2009, and I've already covered that in a separate video, so I will be skipping over that. Matate would also play Leatherface, the signature slasher of the parody. But also Jimmy Jim Slug, aka Stephen J. Glansky, would play a hillbilly that sells the nerd the game.
Look at this stock label. I mean, do you know what this is supposed to be? Can you tell me what this is?
I have no idea what that is. I can tell you what it looks like. It looks like the shit stain in the bottom of my drawers right now.
Who had previously appeared as one of the main cast members of The Deader the Better, which is even referenced.
Batter up, boy.
Batter up, boy.
And Slug gives an amazing juvenile old man performance. He also acted on minor parts on TV, so this guy was like an actual professional actor that was in the budget, and he was a great choice. Another early Cinemassacre production is also referenced 1999's The Head Incident, a horror short film about a possessed ventriloquist dummy head that received a remaster and sequel in 2020. And James actually convincingly combines anger and fear, not breaking character.
Oh, you motherfuckers, what the do to me?
The review segment also being well incorporated into setting up the conclusion of escaping from Leatherface, and setting up the conclusion the next episode, Halloween, being another flat-out movie parody of sorts. Ignoring E.T. at his fans' dismay, a nice bit of continuity. The highlight obviously being the inclusion of child actors for the parts of Optimus Prime and Swamp Thing.
That's not chocolate, that's poop.
It's not chocolate, nor is it poop. It's shit.
And it's just funny to see children in such a juvenile but amateur production. Like, I've seen a lot of people question whose children they were, and they were the children of Liam Mulvaney, one of the more obscure AVGN contributors, doing camera work for AVGN's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Bible Games 2, and Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle. Matate would also help shoot Halloween, and Mulvaney's wife would also make a cameo. Rolf is a father, but he would not claim to raise children until 2013.
Oh, wait a minute. alright. No, I'm alright, Boomy. Boomy. Come on, Boomy. Boomy. Nothing.
What, Daddy? What's Boomy doing?
He's nothing. He's just being a pain. He's alright.
So they're not his kids, popular to contrary belief. This also includes a bonus review of Haunted House, which is a great callback to Nightmare on Elm Street with one of the best one-liners of the series.
Should have just called the game Boo, Haunted House. Boo, Haunted House.
These two were better than the last two slasher-themed episodes and two of the best episodes.
It's Meatwad. Yeah, it's Meatwad.
Next, Dragon's Lair. Now, I did, again, play the PS3 and Xbox 360 re-release of the original machine growing up, and as it's explained in the episode, the fact that a NES port was even made is conceptually and technologically ridiculous, and half the episode focusing on one scene in the game is surprisingly justified since the difficulty is very visually noticeable. The pissing in the pool part is also great.
Say you're standing in a pool full of piss all the way up to your neck. Then somebody comes in with a bucket full of shit to dump on your head. Do you duck down under the piss, or do you just stay up and take on the shit?
The ending paralleling the game is also funny, but this one is just really standard. The next episode being a two-part Christmas special, AVGN's Christmas Carol. It's not that long for a two-parter, but that doesn't really derail the quality. I imagine seasonal restrictions were an issue with the two parts of the solution. Being a parody of A Christmas Carol, structuring it around game reviews. First reviewing Home Alone 2 on the NES to establish the nerd's resentment against Christmas. Stuttering Craig playing the Ghost of Christmas Past and Handsome Tom playing the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, being represented by Dracula from Simon's Quest. Handsome Tom was the co-founder of Screw Attack, who actually left Screw Attack for that guy with the glasses.
This is a sad day for Handsome Tom.
And I imagine this was an epic crossover for die-hard game trailers fans at the time, reusing childhood footage for the past and reviewing Shaq Fu in the present, his current normalcy. Shaq Fu is just another subject matter that writes itself, and with Christmas Yet to Come containing an excellent self-parody.
Now, I got this bullshit game called Far Cry Vengeance.
Of future James reviewing Wii games, which are now vintage, and there's no attempt at legitimate analysis, it's just screwing off and the joke works, and the nerd disapproving of his future is a great attention to continuity. The inclusion of Full House Tournament Fighter is also a great off-guard joke. It's not an official game, but it's a real game of a parody of bad licensed games from the era. Another excellent use of parody that makes a unique episode. But this episode actually ties into another separate forgotten part of nerd history, a very nerdy non-canonical Captain S Christmas, a crossover special between Captain S and AVGN. Now you're probably wondering, who the hell is Captain S? Well, he was the star of a self-titled series on Screw Attack that only lasted 10 episodes excluding this crossover, and it was a sketch series parody of Saved by the Bell involving a fan of vintage Sega.
It's revenge, aren't you, Chad Belmont?
Becky?
You were supposed to meet Lunk and me a half hour ago in front of the youth center for the junior prom decorating committee bake sale.
Bake sale, right.
Arguably a parody of Captain N, the protagonist of Captain N the Game Master, a despised Nintendo cartoon from 1989.
Merry Christmas.
Non-canonical actually refers to Captain S's plot, but is canon to the timeline of AVGN. Something that you can't really say for things like That Guy with the Glasses 1 Year Anniversary Brawl.
I am a man!
Because it actually affects the plot of Christmas Carol with Captain S, gifting the nerd Home Alone 2 on the NES, which is reviewed at the beginning of Christmas Carol. A callback to the very beginning of the Captain S crossover where he's playing Home Alone 1 on NES. The next episode was a previously unfinished episode written in 2006, chronologically confused about the Zelda timeline, designed as a follow-up to the previous. And as we'll see, this isn't the last one, excluding You Know What's Bull. And as Rolf would disclose in the beginning, it's not really an angry video. Like, it's a fine analysis for that franchise in 2006, but the anger is a little forced, and of course it's outdated, so there's not much of a reason to really watch it now. It's not surprising it was previously unfinished or shelved. The final episode of Season 2 being another movie commemoration release with Rambo on NES to tie in with the 2008 movie. And once again, sort of a forced commemoration release. A standard episode, but highlights the addressing of the accidental prediction of a fourth Rambo movie just being titled Rambo. Season 2 ending in January of 2008.